Far away from Earth, on a frozen planet called Alaris, the last human colony struggled to survive. The planet was quiet and cold, covered in endless snow and broken metal structures that once shined like hope. For years, the colony had lived in the shadow of silence, surrounded by ice storms and dead skies. The only thing that kept them alive was the great reactor buried deep under the ground. The humans called it the heart of Alaris. It gave them heat, light, and a reason to stay alive. But now, the heart was dying. No one knew why the temperature inside the colony was falling so fast. At first, it was small. A little cold in the sleeping quarters, a small drop of power in the lights. But soon, the frost began to creep along the walls, and the once bright corridors turned into frozen tunnels. Machines stopped working. Water turned to ice, and the sound of the reactor, which once hummed like a heartbeat, began to fade into silence. Commander Arlen stood near the observation window, watching the weak light from the dying reactor. His breath came out like smoke. He had been leading the colony for 8 years, ever since the communication with Earth went dark. He knew that if the reactor stopped completely, all of them would die in less than a day. The cold on Alaris was not something a human could fight. It would freeze blood in minutes and lungs in seconds. "Report," he said quietly, his voice calm but heavy. Lieutenant Mara stepped forward, her face pale and her uniform covered in frost. "We've lost heat in Sector 3, sir. 2 people already gone. We moved the rest to central housing." Arlen nodded, his eyes still fixed on the glass. "And the reactor? It's dropping faster than expected," Mara said. "Dr. Keon thinks the core might be cracking. The radiation shield is still holding, but if the crack spreads..." Arlen finished her sentence softly, "Then the heart will die." The silence that followed felt colder than the air around them, deep below the colony. In the reactor chamber, Dr. Keon worked without rest. His hands shook as he typed into the control panel. The screens flickered, showing strange energy readings. The core was reacting to something unknown, something that did not come from inside the system. He had seen patterns before, signals that looked almost like code hidden inside the energy spikes. It was as if someone or something was trying to talk through the reactor. He had told no one yet, not even Arlen, because what the readings showed could not be real. The heart of Alaris was built using technology from Earth. Yes, but also something older, something found under the ice, when the first explorers landed. The ancient structure had pulsed with heat and energy like a living thing. Humans had built their reactor around it, using it as a core. It had powered the colony for decades. But now, it was waking up. The lights above Keon flickered, and a low vibration filled the room. He felt it through his boots, a deep rumble that almost sounded like a voice. He froze, staring at the core chamber, where faint red light glowed through the cracks. "Please," he whispered to himself, "not now." Ow. In the control room, alarms began to beep. Mara's eyes widened as she looked at the readings. "Commander, the core temperature just spiked, then dropped again." "It's unstable," Arlen turned sharply. "Get Keon on the comms." Static filled the speakers. Then Keon's voice came through, rough and fast. "The core is reacting. It's sending something. Signal. I can't explain it, but it's not natural," Arlen said. "It's alive," Keon said, almost whispering. "It's trying to speak." The room fell silent again. Only the cold wind outside could be heard, whistling through the steel walls. That night, many in the colony could not sleep. The walls groaned from the cold, and strange vibrations passed through the floor. Some said they heard whispers in the pipes. Others said they dreamed of fire under the ice at 0300 hours. The reactor pulsed again, brighter this time. A wave of warmth swept through the colony for a moment, and people cheered, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Leaving the cold stronger than before, Arlen stood in the control center, his hands gripping the railing. "If it's alive," he said softly, "then maybe it wants something." Mara frowned. "You think it's angry?" "I think," Arlen said, watching the faint red light flicker in the distance, "we built our home on something that wasn't meant to be touched." Far below, Dr. Keon stared at the core chamber. The cracks in the heart of Alaris now glowed with a deeper red, almost like blood beneath skin. The readings on his screen flashed faster and faster, showing a pattern that began to repeat a series of numbers, then symbols. It was a message, and as he watched, the message translated itself into words on his display. One life for the many. Keon's heart stopped for a moment. His breath came short. He looked up at the glowing chamber and whispered, "What do you mean?" The lights went out, and for the first time in years the heart of Alaris spoke not in words, but in sound. A long, deep hum that filled the entire colony like a voice from the dark. Every person felt it in their bones. Every mind heard the same silent question: who will give the heat? The hum of the reactor did not stop. It echoed through every corridor, every sleeping chamber, and every heart that still beat in the frozen colony. People woke from their bunks, confused and afraid. The sound was not loud, yet it was everywhere, like a whisper beneath the skin. The lights flickered with every pulse of the hum, turning the walls red for a second, then fading back to white. Commander Arlen stood near the main terminal, watching the readings jump across the screen. The heart of Alaris was alive, there was no doubt anymore. The machine's energy patterns had changed into something almost rhythmic. "Almost like breathing," Keon, Arlen said into the com. "I want answers. Now." The scientist's voice came through, low and strained. "I don't think it's just a machine anymore, Commander. The signals, they have structure. It's repeating the same phrase in different forms. Always the same meaning." "What meaning?" "One life for the many." Mara turned sharply, her eyes wide. "It's asking for a sacrifice?" Keon hesitated. "That's what it looks like. Every time I try to analyze it, the data reorders itself. It's like it knows I'm watching." Arlen took a deep breath. His mind was racing. The heart had powered their colony for decades. Without it, they were nothing. But if it was truly alive, if it wanted something, then it could be bargaining outside. The storm howled across the icy plains. The wind carried bits of ash and metal, remains of old machines buried in snow. The planet was dying too, slowly turning to silence, just like its reactor. Hours passed. The hum continued, steady and calm, but the temperature kept falling. In the lower sectors, people wrapped themselves in blankets. Whispering prayers to the machine that had kept them alive for generations, some began to believe the heart was angry. Arlen walked to the observation deck, where he could see the faint red glow under the ice far below. It looked almost beautiful, like a heartbeat trapped inside a frozen body. "Do you think it can hear us?" Mara asked quietly. Arlen didn't answer. He pressed a hand to the glass, watching the red flicker. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe it's been listening all along." In the reactor chamber, Dr. Keon stared at the words still burning across his screen. He tried everything to shut the signal down. He cut power, rerouted circuits, and even disconnected parts of the system. But each time the message returned stronger. The machine was not losing power. It was feeding on something unseen. Then the readings changed again. The numbers formed a new pattern. Keon leaned closer. The translation flickered on his monitor. The first warmth was given. The second must follow. His eyes widened. The first warmth? What did that mean? He opened the archives, searching through the colony's early records. Most files were damaged, but one survived a report from the first engineers, who had built the heart of Alaris almost 60 years ago. The log was short, and most of it corrupted, but one line was still clear. Test 1 successful. Core stabilized after human input. Human input. Keon's hands froze on the keyboard. The first warmth wasn't just energy. It was life. Someone had given their life to activate the core long ago. That was why it had burned for so many years. Keon ran from the chamber, his breath white in the cold air. He reached the command center and slammed the report onto the screen. "It's not just a reactor," he said, breathing hard. "It needs life to live. That's why it's asking for one. That's why it's dying." The room went quiet. The meaning was too heavy, too cold to hold. Mara shook her head. "You're saying someone has to die? To keep it running?" Keon nodded slowly. not just die, be given to it. Their life energy, their heat, it's what keeps the core burning. Arlen stared at the floor. The hum seemed louder now, like the heart was waiting for an answer. How long would it last, he asked, if we gave it what it wants? Keon hesitated. If the data is right, another 50 years. Maybe more. 50 years. Enough time for a new generation? Enough time for the colony to live. Arlen looked at his people on the screen, the faces of those still awake, huddled together, afraid but alive. He turned to Keon. Find out how the transfer works. Keon's face went pale. You're not thinking. I'm thinking about survival, Arlen said. That's my duty. The scientist looked at him, eyes wet with fear and respect. You don't even know if it will choose you. Arlen gave a small, tired smile, then let it choose. That night, the hum changed tone. It became softer, slower, almost like a heartbeat. The temperature stopped falling. A strange warmth spread through the corridors again, brief but real. It was as if the heart was listening. Arlen stood in his quarters, watching the red light flicker outside. He touched the small pendant around his neck, a piece of metal from Earth, shaped like a flame. He remembered the promise he made when they first arrived on Alaris. Humanity would never freeze again. Now he understood what the heart wanted. The next morning, he walked into the reactor chamber alone. Keon tried to stop him, but Arlen only said one thing before the doors closed behind him. Tell them the warmth returned. The lights inside glowed red, and the hum grew deeper. Keon stood outside, helpless, as the power readings began to rise. The floor trembled, and the frost on the walls melted away. Inside, the last human commander of Alaris looked at the living core and whispered, "One life for the many," and the heart answered with light. The warmth returned to Alaris like a forgotten dream. For the first time in months, the colony's walls no longer groaned from the cold. The ice melted from the windows, and the heavy breath of frost lifted from the air. People stepped out from their shelters, touching the walls with wonder. The lights burned bright again, and the heart of Alaris hummed with a steady, living rhythm. But there was no celebration. Not truly. Everyone knew what had been lost to bring the warmth back. Commander Arlen was gone. His name was spoken in quiet voices, never loud, as if the walls themselves were listening. No one saw what happened inside the chamber, but the monitors showed one final burst of light before the screens went black. When the system came back online, the energy readings were perfect, stronger than they had ever been. The heart was alive again, and the colony was saved. Dr. Keon spent the next day studying the data. The power levels were balanced. The radiation levels were safe. Every system in the colony worked at full capacity. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But deep down, something was wrong. The numbers moved in strange patterns, almost like the signal from before, only now it wasn't a message. It was a pulse. Keon sat alone in the control room, staring at the red lines dancing across the screen. It's like it's breathing, he whispered to himself. Or remembering. Lieutenant Mara entered quietly. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her voice was steady. The people are asking for news, Doctor. They want to know what happened to the commander. Keon didn't look away from the screen. He saved us. That's all they need to know. She stepped closer. You don't believe that, do you? Keon finally turned to face her. He's still in there, Mara. The energy pattern, it's identical to his life scan. The same rhythm, the same heat signature. The heart didn't just take him. He pointed to the data on the screen. It became him. Mara froze. You're saying he's alive? I'm saying he's part of it now. Outside the window, the faint red glow of the heart flickered beneath the ice. It looked almost calm, but sometimes the light changed. Soft pulses, like the beat of a heart. That night, the people gathered in the central hall. They lit candles, small circles of light in the darkness, to honor their fallen commander. Keon stood among them, silent. Mara spoke to the crowd. Her voice echoed through the hall. He gave his life so we could have warmth again. His sacrifice will be remembered as long as this colony stands. The people bowed their heads. The warmth around them felt almost alive, wrapping them in comfort. But as the crowd began to leave, Kian noticed something strange. The air near the vents was warm to warm. A whisper of static filled his ear, like faint words hidden in the hum of the generator. He leaned closer. Mara. Kian stepped back, his eyes wide. The voice was faint, but he knew it. He had heard it 1,000 times. Commander Arlon. He ran through the corridors, the sound following him like an echo. He reached Mara's quarters and banged on the door. When she opened it, his face was pale. "He's speaking," Kian said. "Arlen, the reactor, it's talking in his voice." Mara stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible. Come see for yourself." They rushed to the control room. Kian turned up the audio filters, isolating the low-frequency hum from the reactor. The sound became clearer, forming patterns that rose and fell like speech. Cold. Outside? Keep them. Warm. Don't. Come down. Mara covered her mouth. "It's him," Kian nodded. "He's conscious. Somehow, he's merged with the core, but it's not stable. The system is changing again." The lights in the room flickered. The power readings jumped. For a moment, the temperature in the colony rose sharply, then dropped. The heart pulsed faster, the red glow outside shifting to a deep crimson. "Something's wrong," Mara said. "What's happening to him?" Kian typed furiously. "The energy flow is increasing. He's trying to regulate it, but the system's too strong. He's fighting it." The floor shook slightly, and the alarms began to beep. Kian's screen filled with new text. The words appeared slowly, one by one. "Don't open the chamber," Mara whispered. "He's warning us." Kian stared at the screen. "He's protecting us from something." The hum grew louder. For a moment, everyone in the colony felt it, a deep vibration through the walls, through their bodies. Some said they heard faint whispers in their minds, voices not human, calling from beneath the ice. Kian looked at the readings again. There was a new signal mixed with the reactor's pulse. Something alien, something old. "It's not just him down there," he said softly. "The thing we built around, it's waking up too." Mara looked toward the window where the red light flickered brighter than ever. "If the heart isn't only ours," she said, "then what did we feed it?" The sound stopped suddenly. The entire colony went silent. The lights held steady, the warmth even. For a moment, it felt peaceful. Then a single message appeared across every screen in the colony, clear, bright, and in Arlen's voice. "It's coming." The lights turned red again. The red light filled every corridor. It wasn't just light anymore, it felt alive, like it was moving through the air, crawling across the walls. The hum of the heart grew deeper, slower, almost like the breathing of something huge beneath the ground. The colonists gathered in small groups, whispering to each other, afraid to say what everyone was thinking. The heart was awake, and it was changing. Mara stood in the control room beside Dr. Kian. The monitors showed strange signals spreading through the system. Some came from the reactor, others from unknown sources. The patterns looked almost like code, but they didn't follow any human logic. Kian rubbed his temples. "The signal is rewriting the colony's main system. It's controlling everything, the doors, the lights, even the oxygen flow." Mara's voice was quiet. "Can you stop it?" He shook his head. "I can't even find where it begins. It's like it's growing from inside the network." Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. Static filled the room. Then a familiar voice spoke through the noise. "Mara." She froze. It was Arlen again, his voice, weak but clear. Kian turned to the console. "Arlen, can you hear us?" There was silence for a moment. Then the voice returned. "Listen. It's not me anymore. It's learning." Signal broke apart into sharp static, then faded completely. Mara stared at the radio. What did he mean? Kian looked at her with fear in his eyes. "He means whatever part of him is left, it's being overwritten. The heart is becoming something else." Outside, the storm began to rise again. Snow slammed against the glass, and the power lights flickered across the base. The temperature didn't fall, But the warmth felt strange, now heavy, unnatural, almost like it came from inside their own bodies. In the lower sectors, strange things started to happen. Machines powered on by themselves. The doors opened and closed without command. One engineer swore he saw shadows moving in the reactor tunnels, shapes that glowed faint red in the dark. At first, the colonists thought they were imagining it. But then the dreams began. Every night, dozens of people woke up screaming. They all dreamed of the same thing. A field of fire under the ice, and a voice whispering, "Give the heat. Feed the core." Some said they saw Commander Arlen standing there, his face calm, his eyes glowing red. Mara tried to keep order. But panic was spreading fast. Kian spent sleepless nights in front of the reactor's data feed. He noticed something terrible. The more people had these dreams, the more power the heart produced. It was feeding on them, not their lives, but their energy, their fear, their warmth. "It's using us," he told Mara, his voice shaking. "Every emotion, every thought, it's taking it, turning it into power." Mara looked horrified. "Then what happens when there's nothing left to take?" Kian stared at her. "Then it'll look for more." A loud crash echoed from the lower levels. The floor trembled, and the alarm lights flashed red. Kian grabbed a console feed. One of the engineers had gone down to check the coolant lines, and now his tracker was gone. Only static showed on the screen. "Lock down that section," Mara ordered. But the system didn't respond. Instead, a single message appeared on the terminal. "He is home now." The letters burned bright red for a moment, then vanished. Kian backed away from the console. "It's talking to us again," Mara whispered. "No, it's claiming him." The hum grew louder. The air vibrated like a heartbeat. The walls seemed to pulse faintly with red light, and the faint sound of whispers echoed through the vents. That night, Mara dreamed. She stood on the frozen plains outside the colony. The ice stretched in every direction, glowing faintly red from beneath. Then the ground cracked open, revealing the great heart beneath a massive sphere of fire and metal, beating like a living organ, and there, standing beside it, was Arlen. He looked at her with calm eyes, but his skin shimmered like heat. "You must leave," he said softly. "It's not me anymore. It's remembering what it was before us." "What is it?" she asked. His voice trembled. "It's the last fire of something older than mankind. We woke it up." She reached out, but before she could touch him, the heart flared bright and she woke up, gasping. The control room lights flickered again. Kian was already awake, staring at new readings. "It's spreading into the planet's crust," he said quickly. "It's not just the reactor anymore. It's fusing with the planet's core." Mara stepped closer. "You mean it's turning the planet itself into?" "A living reactor," Kian finished. "A heat source that never dies. But if it keeps spreading, it'll destroy everything on the surface." A low rumble shook the base. The red light outside grew brighter, bleeding through the snow like veins of molten metal. The colony walls began to creak and moan. Kian turned to Mara. "If we don't stop it, this planet will burn from the inside." She stared out the window, where the sky glowed faint red over the horizon. "Then we find a way to shut it down." But the reactor's voice whispered again, soft and cold, echoing through the speakers. "You can't stop the heat. You can only feed it." And somewhere deep below, the heart of Alaris pulsed one last time, stronger, brighter, alive. The colony shook again, stronger this time. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the walls vibrated with the deep hum of the reactor. The red light outside had turned into a glow that filled the sky, painting the frozen plains with a burning color. What once looked like a dead world now looked alive and angry. Mara stood near the command table, gripping its edge as another tremor rolled through. "How long before it reaches the core?" she asked. Dr. Kian looked pale. "Hours, maybe less. It's drawing energy faster than before. It's feeding on the planet's heat and on us." The comms crackled, and a voice from the lower levels shouted, "Sector 9 is collapsing. The floor is opening up." The sound of screaming followed, then silence. Kian slammed his hand on the panel. We can't keep staying here. The structure won't last. We have to shut the heart down before the entire colony sinks. Mara turned toward him. How? He hesitated. The only way is from inside the chamber. We'd have to override the core's link to the planet manually. She frowned. That's suicide. He nodded slowly. I know. Outside the window, they could see streams of red energy crawling up through the cracks in the ice, twisting like veins. The snow melted wherever the light touched, and steam rose into the air. The planet was bleeding heat. Kian pulled up the reactor's schematics. I found something. When the first team built the heart, they created a failsafe, a shutdown code buried deep inside the main sequence. But it was locked. It needs a live command from someone linked to the system. Mara understood immediately. You mean from Arlen? Kian's voice was quiet. Yes, he's the key. If we can reach him, whatever part of him is still conscious, we might make him trigger the shutdown. But he told us not to come down, Mara said softly. Kian looked up at her. If we don't, everyone dies. The floor trembled again. The lights flickered. The red hum grew louder, now mixed with faint, distant whispers, hundreds of voices speaking together. Some sounded human, others did not. Mara took a deep breath. Get your gear. We're going down. The elevator to the reactor chamber had stopped working, so they used the maintenance shafts. The air grew hotter the deeper they went, thick and heavy like breath. The walls glowed faintly red. Drops of water hissed when they touched the metal floor. As they climbed down the last ladder, Kian stopped. Do you feel that? Mara nodded. The hum was no longer just sound. It was inside their chests. Pulsing with their hearts, they stepped into the lower hall, where the door to the heart's chamber stood sealed shut. The metal was warm to the touch. Kian opened his tool pack and started bypassing the lock. Once we're inside, he said, we have minutes before the radiation reaches lethal levels. Stay behind me. The door opened with a deep groan and a wave of red light flooded the tunnel. They shielded their eyes and stepped inside. The chamber was enormous, a cathedral of fire and metal. The heart floated in the center, a massive sphere of molten energy beating slowly like a living organ. Streams of light connected it to the walls, pulsing in rhythm, and there in the glow. They saw him, Commander Arlen. He stood in front of the core, his body half human, half light. His face looked calm, but his eyes burned red. Mara froze. Arlen. He turned slowly, his voice echoing through the chamber. You shouldn't have come. Kian took a step forward. We have to stop this, Commander. It's consuming the planet. It'll destroy everything. Arlen looked at him sadly. It's not destroying. It's remembering. Remembering what? Mara asked. The world before us, he said. This fire was never ours. It was part of something ancient, a machine older than mankind. It burned in silence for ages, waiting for warmth. We gave it life again. Heart pulsed brighter behind him. The walls shook. Kian shouted, then help us shut it down. You can override it. You still have control? Arlen's eyes softened. I tried, but it's not listening anymore. It's awake, and it wants to live. The ground split near them, and streams of red energy shot upward. The heat was unbearable. Mara's voice broke. If we do nothing, it'll burn the whole planet. Everyone will die. Please, Arlen, you can't let that happen. For a moment, the hum slowed. Arlen looked down, as if listening to something deep inside the light. Then he spoke softly. There may be one way, but it will need both of you. Kian frowned. What do you mean? The heart needs 2 human links to open its core. One to command, and one to feed it. You must finish what I began. Mara's eyes filled with tears. No, we're not sacrificing anyone else. Arlen stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. If we don't, the fire will spread beyond Alaris. It will reach the stars. It will burn until nothing is left. The heart must die with a final gift of heat. Kian looked at Mara. We can't let it spread. She shook her head, tears falling. There has to be another way. Arlen reached out his hand, the light glowing around it. You have to choose. humanity's warmth or its end. The heart pulsed again, brighter than before. The walls cracked, and the sound of molten energy filled the air. Mara took a step forward, staring into the light. If this is the only way, then we end it together. Kian grabbed her arm. Mara, she met his eyes. He gave his life for us. Now it's our turn. The heart flared, and the red glow swallowed everything. The light was blinding. Mara and Kian shielded their eyes as the heart of Alaris pulsed brighter, its glow filling every corner of the chamber. The air trembled. The metal floor beneath them began to melt, forming glowing lines that stretched toward the core like veins of fire. The heat was unbearable, yet both of them stood their ground. Arlen's voice echoed through the chamber, calm but distant, as if carried by the light itself. The heart is reaching its limit. If it burns any longer, the planet will die. You must complete the cycle, Mara shouted over the noise. Tell us what to do. 2 human links, he said. 1 to command. 1 to feed. Only then will the fire end. Kian looked at the core. It pulsed like a beating heart, the same rhythm as their own. If we connect, it will take one of us, he said. Mara stared at the glowing sphere. Then it should be me. Kian turned to her, his face hard. No, you lead the people. You keep them alive. If anyone should stay, it's you. She shook her head. You're the only one who can understand its code. You're the only one who can make sure it shuts down. The ground shook again. A crack opened across the chamber floor, spilling red light. The heart screamed, not in words, but in sound. A deep and painful cry that shook their bones. Arlen's voice cut through the noise. There's no time. Choose. Kian looked at Mara. She stared back, her eyes full of both fear and strength. He knew what she was thinking. He had seen it in her eyes since the beginning, the same resolve Arlen once had. He clenched his fists. Then we do it together. Before she could argue, he grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the main console. The panel was glowing, symbols dancing across the screen. It no longer looked like a machine. It looked like something alive, breathing through light and sound. Place your hands here, Arlen's voice said, and give it what it needs. Mara and Kian pressed their palms onto the console. The metal was hot, but it didn't burn. Instead, it pulsed beneath their skin. Red light crawled up their arms, weaving into their veins. For a moment, there was silence. Then the world vanished. They were standing in a vast red void. The heart surrounded them, a living storm of light, memory, and energy. Faces flickered in the glow, not human, not alien, but something between both. They saw fragments of history, stars dying, worlds freezing, fires burning in the dark. Mara whispered, "What is this?" A voice answered, not Arlen's, not the heart's, but something ancient. I was made to keep warmth alive, to hold fire against the void. You woke me, and now I remember. Kian looked around. You're a machine. I was, the voice said. But you gave me life again. You gave me heat that feels. Your kind carries what the stars have forgotten, the will to burn for others. The red storm pulsed brighter. Images filled their minds, the first settlers arriving on Alaris, finding the frozen relic beneath the ice. The engineers touching the strange core, feeling its warmth awaken. The first one who sacrificed their life to light the colony's reactor. You kept the promise, the voice said softly. But every flame must end. Mara felt her heart ache. If you understand us, then help us. Let us end this without more death. The light shimmered. There can be no life without heat. But if you wish to end the fire, you must give me your final warmth. Together. Kian looked at her. It wants both of us. Mara nodded slowly. Maybe that's the only way to stop it from ever waking again. They joined hands. The red light grew around them, wrapping them in warmth. It didn't feel like pain. It felt like sunlight after a long winter. Kian smiled faintly. Maybe this is what he felt.
Oh.
Mara nodded. Then we give the last heat of mankind. The heart pulsed one final time. The chamber filled with light so bright, it turned the world white. The sound of the reactor's hum rose, then faded into silence. Outside, on the surface, the colonists felt the ground shake. The red glow under the ice flashed once, then vanished. The sky turned dark again, but the air was still warm. Slowly, the storms calmed, and the snow stopped falling. Hours later, surviving colonists entered the reactor level. The chamber was silent. The core had gone dark. Only a faint warmth lingered in the air, soft and peaceful. Mara and Keon were gone. Dr. Keon's recorder lay on the console. When they played it, only one line was clear. The fire sleeps, but warmth remains. The colony continued to live. The people rebuilt, planting crops in the thawed soil. The warmth inside the walls never faded, not even during the longest storms. Some said it was the heart's final gift. Others said it was the spirits of those who gave their lives for mankind's survival. Years later, a child asked one of the elders, "Where does the heat come from?" The old woman smiled gently and pointed to the ground. "From the last ones who refused to let us freeze, and deep beneath the planet, far below the ice and stone, the heart of Alaris slept. Its light dim but alive, waiting not for more heat, but for the next voice brave enough to awaken it." 300 years later, Alaris was quiet again. The storms had returned, but they were softer now, more like whispers than roars. The world had aged, yet traces of the old colony still slept beneath layers of frost and time. A silver ship broke through the clouds, engines glowing blue against the gray sky. Its name was the Dawn Seeker. Inside it, a small crew of explorers prepared for landing. Their mission was simple: to find the source of the ancient heat that still pulsed faintly beneath the surface of El Aris. Captain Reyna Solon stood by the viewport, watching the frozen world below. "Hard to believe anyone lived here," she said softly. Her science officer, Tomas, checked his readings. "The surface temperature is minus 80 degrees, but there's still geothermal warmth deep underground. It shouldn't be possible after all this time." Reyna frowned. "Then something's still alive down there." They landed near a half-buried structure, a broken dome, half-eaten by ice. The walls were scarred by centuries, yet when Reyna touched the metal, it felt faintly warm. "Still breathing?" she whispered. The crew moved inside. Their lights cut through darkness and dust, revealing old markings on the walls, human names, messages, a faded emblem. Colony L, Eris-9. Tomas knelt beside a shattered console. "This tech is older than the Federation. It's human, but not from our time." Reyna brushed away the frost and saw a small plaque beneath the console. It read, "The last heat of mankind." She tilted her head. "A legend," she said quietly. "My grandmother told me stories about this place, a colony that burned their last fire to keep humanity alive." The team continued deeper. Each step echoed in the hollow corridors. They reached a massive chamber, where the floor glowed faintly red beneath the ice. Tomas scanned it with his wrist device. "There's a power source still active. Something still running. After 3 centuries, Reyna said. "That's impossible." As they approached the center, the red light grew brighter, forming a soft pulse. It wasn't mechanical. It was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Reyna knelt beside the source. "It's warm," she whispered, "and it feels alive." Suddenly, the lights flickered. A faint voice echoed through the room, distorted but human. "If you can hear this, the fire sleeps, but warmth remains." Aina froze. "Play that again," the voice repeated, softer this time, like an echo from the past. Tomas looked at her. "Captain, that voice. It's human, but it's not ours. It's centuries old." Reyna's pulse quickened. "It's them," she said quietly. "The first colonists." The chamber lights flickered again, and this time, a holographic projection came to life. A man and a woman, standing side by side in red light. Their faces were calm, their hands joined. Mara and Keon. The hologram spoke, their voices faint but clear. "If you are seeing this, then the world lives. The fire we gave has not been forgotten." The heart sleeps below, not as a weapon, but as a promise. It carries the warmth of humankind, our courage, our kindness, our will to endure. Reyna felt her throat tighten. They sacrificed themselves, she whispered. The hologram continued, do not awaken it unless the cold returns. The fire can save, but it can also burn. Remember, mankind's strength is not in power, but in the warmth we give to one another. The light faded, leaving only silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Tomas said softly, Captain, the energy readings are stable. Whatever they built, it's still working. It's keeping this planet alive. Reyna nodded slowly. Then we don't touch it. We leave it as it is. She looked around the ancient chamber, the melted walls, the marks of hands that once fought to survive. They gave everything to protect this warmth. We owe them respect. The team began documenting everything. They collected small fragments, data chips, recordings, samples, but left the heart untouched before leaving. Reyna turned one last time toward the glowing red light beneath the ice. You kept the promise, she said softly. Now it's our turn. As the dawn seeker rose into the cold sky, the clouds parted for a moment. The sunlight hit the surface, reflecting off the ice in bright waves. For a brief second, it looked as if the planet itself was glowing alive again. Back aboard the ship, Tomas watched the readings. Temperatures rising slightly, he said. Just a few degrees, but enough to melt some of the surface. Reyna smiled faintly. Maybe it's their way of saying goodbye. The ship ascended higher until Elaris became a small, pale sphere in the void. The captain looked out at the stars and whispered, the last heat of mankind. Still burning, deep below, where no one could reach, the heart of Elaris pulsed once. Not in warning, but in peace. Its glow was soft now, golden instead of red, like the first warmth of dawn. The colony's story had ended, but its fire lived on, not as destruction, but as memory, as hope, as the endless will of humankind to stand against the cold,